Hey guys, welcome back to the Monday Morning Commute. We're going to keep talking about EVs this week. This is my space to just talk about what's on my mind and what I'm hearing and seeing in the industry. Do it once a week on Monday. So if you like that, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be here every week. At least we're going to try to be. So last week's episode, we talked about the green wave. All of these EVs are going to be flooding into the marketplace over the next really 12 to 18 months from every manufacturer. And, that's not good news if you don't like EVs. And based on the comments that you guys dropped on last week's episode, a lot of you just don't. And there's still a lot of information being shared or opinions being expressed that are not accurate. And so we're going to talk about that today. We had quite a few things pop up in the comments. And first off, sales are tanking. That's what you told me. EV sales are in the toilet in the United States, and that's just factually incorrect. Year over year, EV sales in the United States are up almost 12%. They are up quarter over quarter. The second quarter, an additional 150,000 EVs entered the roadway versus Q1. So, no, sales are not tanking. Now, what has happened is the growth in sales has slowed down slightly versus last year. And you saw a lot of news and people commenting on social media, especially in the first quarter, that the growth rate had declined, and that meant nobody's interested in buying EVs anymore. That's just not the case. It has slowed down, and so what you have seen is you have seen some companies respond to that by altering their plans. They've either slowed down the delivery of EV vehicles or the ramp up in production. And some of them have even altered more long-term plans to try to right-size the market. Again, everybody's pivoting to this. And so, there is the risk of having too many EVs for sale in the marketplace to keep up with the adoption, right? So everybody's trying to right-size that. My day job is in an industry where inventory is everything. Most of you are. And if you're in a competitive industry, you're constantly trying to balance supply and demand. And that's what you're seeing. But no, EV sales are not tanking. They're still growing. All right. Next on the list was rebates. And I'm going to pause on that. I'll come back to that. I'll skip it. But the other comment was we're at peak EV. Okay. So this is the most EVs we're ever going to see in the marketplace. And that this technology is going to go the way of the dinosaur. No, that's certainly not true either. In Texas, we're about to cross, if we haven't already, 300,000 EVs in the state through state registration. Probably in the next 2 years, that's going to hit 500,000. At least that's the forecast. We're a long, long way from seeing any sort of decline in total number of EVs. I mean, something like hydrogen fuel cells would have to come along and a whole new infrastructure. And since the infrastructure for EVs is being built out, that's really just wishful thinking. One of the other comments I saw on our channel was really interesting. Somebody came at me with the physics of energy and energy transfer and charge rates and battery chemistry and, basically saying this is the dumbest idea. It's never going to work. The problem with that thinking is it is working. And we continue to see more and more people switch to electrification, and the infrastructure is growing. And I think a lot of the spirit of the comment was based on EVs from 3 to 5 years ago. The reality is our charging rates are up, our battery chemistry is improving. We're about to go into solid state battery chemistry, which is going to be a game changer in power delivery, overall efficiency, the ability to store more energy in a physical space on the car. You don't have the same thermal issues that you deal with the current battery technology. And so you'll be able to charge at a very high rate and make better use of that power in the car itself. I mean, we're probably 2 years from seeing the first real solid state, maybe 3 years, solid state electric vehicle, but it's coming. And we're also seeing dramatic improvements in the existing battery chemistry and overall architecture. So a lot of the issues that, folks are wishing were true, they continue to decline in their importance. And so just keep that in mind. And then one of the one of the funniest things that's actually happened in the YouTube space is there's a little bit of back and forth going on among some of the creators out there. In particular, Scotty Kilmer is, very famous YouTuber, very hostile to EVs, and some of his recent videos against EVs have spread some very strange disinformation, but also he's just bringing things up that just don't exist, or they're not true, or maybe something you shouldn't even bother considering. And I'll give you an example. So he brought up the fact that most households are only going to have one EV. They're not going to pivot to two EVs, because why would you do that? Is anybody actually going to go through the cost of establishing a second EV charger? And that caught my attention, all right, because we have a level 2 charger at home. I have the Jeep 4xe, and we used to have a Chevy Bolt EUV, okay, full electric. Having one charger was really never a problem at the house. And the reason for that is that Bolt EUV, the full electric, I was only charging that car maybe once every 5 or 6 days. I mean, it went 250 miles on a full charge, okay? So one overnight out of the week, or maybe 1.5 overnight charging sessions in a week, is just not a problem. And if you have multiple EVs, you're just managing that. You're just picking the night that, your wife's car is charging, or your car is charging, or your second car. You're not plugging in these cars all the time, especially if you also have other charging options like at your office or whatever. Now, where this could come into play, and I said could, is if you have a combo with a plug-in hybrid or multiple plug-in hybrids and an EV, because plug-ins do need to be charged more often. They have limited range. And if you want to get the most benefit out of those, then most likely you're going to have them charging at home almost every time. I certainly do, because I consume all the energy on my round trip. And by the time I get home, if we're going to go run some errands or go to dinner later that night, I do want to plug it in so that I have enough energy to make that trip. So that is something to consider. But most plug-in hybrids, okay, most will fully charge on level 1 regular outlet overnight. Okay, so now I choose to use the level 2 just because it's faster and gets the battery up to charge for those errands, like I said. But if I plugged it in every single night over that 9, 10, 12 hours that the car is sitting at home, it's going to fully charge. So I don't need multiple level 2 chargers installed in my house. It's just not a problem that most people are going to encounter. All right, so I said I would come back to rebates because one of the comments that was very political in nature, okay, I won't go into the details, but basically saying, hey, you can kiss your $7,500 rebate goodbye. To which I say, okay, that's fine in general. And the reason why is because there are a lot of cars on the market today that don't qualify for the $7,500 rebate if you buy the car. Well, guess what's happened in the market? Most of those manufacturers, when that rebate eligibility went away, they just dropped the price of the car $7,500. What does that tell you? That tells you that there is artificial pricing increases in the market to get to the MSRP that manufacturers have stated. Okay, so the existence of $7,500 has jacked up MSRP. Manufacturers are going to sell cars at what they think customers are going to buy them. That's just basic, right? And if you got $7,500 in your pocket, or in your back pocket to buy an EV, well, they're going to inflate the cost of that vehicle. Now, where this does come into play is in leasing, right? Because leasing a car is all based on a capitalized cost, the difference between the purchase price and the residual of the vehicle 2-3 years down the road. And those residuals and those purchase prices are determined by the finance companies, the dealers, and the manufacturer. Right? There's a lot of parties involved in what those numbers ultimately end up on, but that's how it goes. Okay, so $100,000 EV, and the residual 3 years later is $70,000, and you're leasing it over 3 years, that capitalized cost is the difference. It's the $30,000. You're going to finance that rate. And anything you can do, any tools in your toolkit to reduce that capitalized cost, it's going to lower that leasing payment. This is a gross oversimplification. But what that $7,500 rebate has done is it's a big, big tool in your toolkit for reducing that capitalized cost. And so depending on which state you're in, what incentives are in place, how your state treats the taxes on leases, lease rates on EVs can be very, very affordable, even for high sticker priced cars, okay? So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about buying or thinking about leasing, especially if you plan on switching out of cars every couple of years. This all comes into play. I'm sure comments are going to be flooded with people who hate leasing. Why would you ever do that? Well, in a market where the technology is rapidly evolving, which is the case in the EV world, leasing, particularly with the incentives thrown at it, can be very, very attractive and can be the smarter option. Not for every car, not for every model, not for every manufacturer. There's a ton of really good deals out there, and it's probably worth you checking out. So, yeah, rebates from a purchase perspective, long-term in the market, the impact on pricing, it's more artificial, but in the lease world, these things are actually still really important. You be the judge, ultimately. All right, guys, episode 2 for EVs, but so many things came up after last week's video. Go back and watch that one if you want. And hey, thanks for riding along. See you next week.